In our first story, Behind Mansion Walls,
Several million-dollar homes, had expensive cars, expensive taste in clothing.
a wealthy gent and his Southern belle staged their own civil war.
She went after him with a bat.
And later, a millionaire's TV meltdown.
Is Jana alive? Has she been kidnapped?
I warned you! I warned you!
Can a devoted husband find his missing wife?
And it was almost like a perfect murder.
I'm Christopher Mason. Some women can be wooed by wealth, falling for the man and the bank balance. But big-ticket romance can be costly. Behind mansion walls, the price of love is sometimes life itself.
It's a hot North Carolina summer in July of 1994, when Charlotte police receive a strange invitation.
The attorney called police and said there's a possible dead body at the Hayes home.
Meeting police at the door of his stately mansion is millionaire businessman John Hayes.
She said, I'm Mr. Hayes. I called. The homicide is in the garage. It's a bloody mess. It's over there. It's my wife. She's dead.
Long before the California gold rush, Charlotte, North Carolina was the scene of America's first gold strike. These days, it's the silver towers of big banks that make this city shimmer with wealth. In the exclusive suburb of Montebello, stately southern manors nestle behind manicured hedges. One such mansion is home to John and Fran Hayes.
A beautiful home, one of the nicest areas of town. Very expensive home, well over $1 million worth.
Beautiful marble foyer with a big, huge staircase leading upstairs. There was a tin bar with a very nice counter and bar seats.
John Hayes makes bags of money, making plastic bags.
He was smart, and he was ambitious, and very good at what he did.
He lived in several million-dollar homes, traveled well, had expensive cars, expensive taste in clothing.
Mr. Hayes was a wealthy man and had done very well.
Together, Fran and John lead a glittering life, wining and dining the Charlotte social set.
All that was on the surface, and beneath there was just this miserable existence that they apparently were living within the walls of this fine home.
Behind closed doors,
What was that all about?
the Hayes marriage is in tatters,
That was politics.
and John likes to drink.
And when the drinking would start, they would
John, don't
get in an argument.
Arguments in the house, fights in the house, you know, pushing and shoving. She would do things to him, and he would do things to her.
She called John every name in the book and said she hated him, wished he was dead. What an awful way to live your life, but that's the life they were living.
Their adopted son is one of the few reasons the couple stays together.
They had adopted a son, and she and her son were very close, and she wanted him to have parents.
John Hayes hires private investigator Ron Garrett to follow Fran. He discovers that she plays away from home.
Fran liked to go out a lot. She liked to dance. She had a boyfriend. She had 2 boyfriends. She wanted to do things a little bit on the wild side.
When she is home, the wayward wife belittles John about his performance in the bedroom.
Calling him names and complaining that he couldn't perform sexually and that she was not going to be deprived of sex because of his situation.
She would parade around, and then say to John, "Oh, I'm sorry that you're impotent."
Hello, John.
And when the millionaire battles lung cancer,
How are you, John?
his wife delivers a touching sympathy message.
Look what I've got for you, John.
She didn't visit him in the hospital, and when she did come, one time she brought a dead plant.
I'm sure it will help you get better real soon.
She said repeatedly that she wished he was dead, wished he would die.
As he recovers from his cancer, John feels he can't take the taunts any longer.
He suffered this decade of abuse and humiliation by her.
You have one,
You're on your back or you're on your knees.
He had told the housekeeper, he told his son, he told an attorney that she was running around on him and she was a terrible wife, and he wanted out of it.
He went to his son and said, "I'm divorcing your mother because I'm tired of what's going on."
And when Charlotte police arrive at John Hayes' mansion on July 12, 1994, he offers no resistance.
When they arrived, were met at the door by John Hayes, who said, "I'm Mr. Hayes. I called. The homicide is in the garage. It's a bloody mess."
Buddy's over here. It's my wife. Stand back, sir.
And they opened the door into this grisly scene, and there were blood spatter marks all over the wall. And Mr. Hayes said, "It's over there. It's my wife. She's dead."
What happened to you, sir? I'm not going to say any more until my turn.
When his lawyer arrives, John tells detectives just how his wife ended up dead on the garage floor. The trouble begins when Fran returns from a shopping trip, and John tells her that he wants a divorce.
She never wanted a divorce. Why should she? She had the comforts of life. She had all the money to spend she wanted to.
Hey, you want to kill you!
She came home. I think she had been drinking, and all of a sudden, the argument started. And my understanding is she went after him with a bat, hits him in the head. Just because somebody's small doesn't mean they're not feisty.
Hey, you're a pig!
Going back to David and Goliath, small people can hurt you, harm you. And I've seen a lot of small people beat the hell out of some big guys.
John defends himself against blow after blow until he finally snaps.
He viewed himself as the abused spouse, and he had been a victim of that humiliation, that abuse, for a decade or more. And she pushed and pushed until she pushed him to his personal breaking point. She had attacked him with a bat, and he'd taken away from her and was striking self-defense.
I took it and I defended myself, and I had to fight her off.
When you lose it like that, you don't know how many times you hit somebody. It's just not something you're thinking of. You're thinking of defending yourself.
Fran crumbles to the floor.
She died of blunt force trauma to the head. She took a lot of blows to the head.
Dazed and confused, John blacks out.
I don't think he really knew what he was doing.
He woke up on the floor of the garage, and he didn't know how long he'd been there, but seemed like it'd been hours. And that he didn't know what to do, and he was just in a panic.
Ever the astute businessman, John follows his instincts and calls his attorney.
The attorney called the police and said there's a possible dead body at the Hayes home.
As homicide detective Gary McFadden surveys the scene, some things just don't add up.
So I remember the Rolls Royce and a Mercedes Benz. Certain things didn't look right. The trunk was open. There was like groceries still in the car, windshield wipers up on the car. So we knew that whatever happened, that person came in and didn't have time to take the groceries out.
I can't say anything until
The body itself is in a strange state.
And so they went over and found her battered, charred, blistered body.
And you could tell that she was attempted to be set on fire. You could smell the remnants of gasoline or kerosene or something on her body, and her clothes and stuff was singed and burnt a little.
Fran's body is not only burnt, it's also decomposing. Detectives conclude that this is not a fresh crime scene. And the clues? are yesterday's news.
She was basically covered with newspapers. And then you can say like a couple of days. So, you know, it's like the first layer is like Monday, second layer is like Tuesday. So we know that it kind of went in sequence.
It can mean only one thing.
She was there for a couple of days before he called his, attorney and told him what was going on.
So what really happened in the garage of this mansion?
I open the bag and I see cash and I see jewelry, Rolex watches, rings and stuff. So this was his treasure chest.
Wealthy socialite Fran Hayes has been lying dead in her garage for at least 2 days. Her husband John tells police it was her or him.
Crazy face.
He acted in the heat of passion, in imperfect self-defense, used excessive force, and did not intend to kill her, did not plan to kill her. He wanted a divorce, not a murder on his hand.
Crime scene investigators scour the area and find evidence of bizarre behavior. The floor is freshly scrubbed, and the trunk of a Mercedes is lined with plastic trash bags.
We saw the scratches on the back of the car as though he was trying to lift Fran and dump her.
Fran's millionaire husband, John, is pleading the fifth.
I can't say anything more until my attorney arrives.
Detective Gary McFadden has a challenge on his hands.
We have the 1,000-piece puzzle given to us, but now we just have to make sure that we're putting it in place. I need to do this right.
Sure, yeah.
John Hayes' attorney allows detectives to search the mansion on one condition.
He says you could search everything except what's in that bag. And it was a plastic bag.
And of course, Gary McFadden, the investigator, says, well, that's where we're starting from, and they seize the bag.
And I open the bag, and I see cash, and I see jewelry. It was, okay, here's a stack of $10,000. And I picked up another stack, and here's a stack of $10,000. So he had money bundled together in increments of $10,000, which I believe was $50,000 in cash, some Rolex watches, some absolutely unbelievable men's jewelry, rings, and stuff. So this was his treasure chest.
Staff at John's bank confirm he emptied his safety deposit box the day after Fran was killed. Police look back at John's movements over the last 2 days. Workers at a nearby store tell of a curious shopping spree.
He went to the local supermarket and bought over $100 worth of cleaning products. The people at the supermarket thought that was odd because here's a man in a nice suit and driving a Rolls Royce, and then all of a sudden he buys just a basket full of cleaning products. Then he goes next door to the hardware store with a list of what he wants. That was odd. You know, you have rope, brick cleaning acid, industrial-sized trash bags, and all these things. And, you know, they jokingly at the hardware said, well, he must be going to kill his wife.
Fran's friends also come forward and paint a very different picture of the marriage. 49-year-old Fran is no spoiled society princess. She works tirelessly at a child care center for less fortunate kids.
She would come in the fancy car, in the Rolls Royce or the Mercedes Benz, but when she got out of the car, it was like she stepped into another world and she left all of that behind.
They talked about what a loving person she was, how much the children loved her, how generous she was with her time.
Friends also reveal the dark side of her husband, John.
Her friends described a long history of physical and emotional abuse on his part toward her, where he would grab her, sling her about, call her terrible, profane names, and tell her she was worthless.
What the hell are you doing?
She was quite unhappy, but apparently wanted to keep the marriage going, try to make it work.
You're nothing but a whore!
After one outburst, John forces his wife to an all-time low.
Anything I want. Bye.
He had urinated on the floor. I don't know if it was the marble foyer floor of the kitchen.
Clean it up! Clean it up! This is my house, I'll do what I want! Clean it
A
up!
friend of Fran says that he makes her clean up the mess with her hair.
You're nothing but a bad whore!
When we started peeling back piece by piece, we found out that it was absolutely unbelievable.
Fran's only comfort is in the arms of other men.
She wanted attention. She was an attractive woman. She wanted to dance, and she wanted to have a good time, and John wouldn't do any of this with her.
Get out my house! Where did you get the house?
Detectives discover it was Fran who wanted out of this marriage.
I hate you!
She told her friends that she had met somebody nice, she wanted a real relationship, and she was leaving it.
She was talking to an attorney about divorce, but then how much would Fran get for leaving John? Half. Half would be a lot, millions.
The final nail in the coffin comes from John's buddies at a local bar.
Everybody at the bar knows he hated the wife. He was kind of the man who came to the bar and hated his wife, but he still lived there. And why don't you leave? And they said, well, I can't leave. She would try to take everything.
He said how unhappy he was in his marriage, and the man asked him, well, won't you just get out? And he said, I'm not going to see her get half of all the money I have. I'll kill her before I'll do that.
Detective Gary McFadden has his motive.
Husband is mad. He doesn't want to give up his wealth, his money, and he's not going to let his wife have it.
Police piece together the real story of that stifling summer day. Fran returns home from shopping and tells John that she wants a divorce.
And then that's when we believed that just triggered everything. It was just the last straw. You can do what you want, but you're not taking my money. You're not taking my money. All hell breaks loose between her and John, and this probably was a good fight. I don't think Fran would have just laid down and just took it.
Mr. Hayes knocked her down and dragged her, grabbed her by the neck, into the garage where he proceeded to finish her off.
The enraged husband beats his wife with a baseball bat.
8 serious lacerations to the skull, one with just a massive skull fracture under, contusions all over the arms, shoulders, neck.
When he realizes Fran is dead, John tries to burn the body.
You know, she wasn't burnt bad because once the fire was lit in the garage, it didn't have oxygen to continue, so it didn't burn. So then I think at that time, panic set in and he didn't know what to do.
So John moves to plan B. Drive the body somewhere and bury it.
We looked at it where he put the wheelbarrow next to the Mercedes-Benz and dumped her into the trunk, but John had a bad back.
When John tries to lift the body, he can't.
And he just decided, well, that's not such a great plan either.
He thinks about burying it in his own yard, but is spotted by the gardener.
He was surprised to see John working in the yard. He thought that was odd because this was definitely not a man who would work in the yard, you know, ever. That is probably the day that he is trying to get rid of the body.
And all through these days after the murder, Fran's body is just left lying on the garage floor.
I've been to a lot of homicides where spouses were killed. It's nothing unusual for the people to start overlooking it. Every time he got in his car, he had to walk right down the steps as to where she was at when he beat her. And in the garage is where everything happened. There was never any hesitation. I've walked down those steps with John. It was almost like it's something that happened to a thing. It's not a person anymore. It's not something that is part of your environment. And that's what happens in a lot of cases. I mean, I've known people sleep in the same bed that they kill somebody. It's just crazy. Could I do it? Could you do it? I don't know. You never know until you experience that.
After all his bungled attempts, John tries to clean up his tracks. Fran's body still lies decaying in the garage, but the tycoon sits tight.
Next day, get another paper, read it, put it over his wife, think about what he's gonna do.
When he's done catching up on the news, John Hayes finally makes a phone call. Not to the police or even his lawyer. No. The Southern gent is expecting company sooner or later, so he wants to look his best.
John had actually had a tailor come over and fit him for a suit. His wife is dead in the garage, and he was getting fitted for a suit. Sure, yeah. Hopefully that was one of the suits he wore to court.
The millionaire is unmasked as a killer without remorse. In November 1996, he goes on trial for murder. Under North Carolina law, he is facing the death penalty.
Well, I would have been urging the jury to return a sentence of a death sentence for a especially heinous, atrocious, and cruel murder that was done for the motive of monetary gain.
Your bits!
The jury doesn't buy John's elaborate story of self-defense.
He came back with a second-degree murder conviction.
That's murder without premeditation.
What?
He is sentenced to life in prison. After 10 years, John Hayes is released on parole and dies a few years later. At his murder trial, John Hayes' defense team pursued an unusual angle, calling him a victim of battered husband syndrome.
You know, people think it's just a female that gets abused. A male can get just as abused as a female. And he really reminded me of a person who had been abused. You know, you can push in, you can be pushed just so far. I didn't think it was a first-degree murder. I never saw premeditation in this case. It just all of a sudden, all hell broke loose. Nobody was thinking of the consequences. Nobody was trying to kill either the other. It just happened. I don't know how else to explain it. It's just the way things happen.
And in a tragic twist, some believe that the lavish lifestyle John gave his wife helped turn him into a killer.
Some of the jurors felt that the reason he got convicted is because they felt that he had molded her into the woman that she was. Gave her the riches, gave her the fur coats, and let her travel and let her do things. And they felt that he basically molded her into the, they didn't use this word, but the type of person that he got to hate. I never really felt that John was an animal. There are some people that are animals. I never really felt he was an animal.
All Fran Hayes craved was love, but her husband's passion for money destroyed them both.
They should have gone different ways and never went as far as they did. And all of a sudden, basically now, two people are dead.
A shattered husband breaks down in front of the nation.
Bawling, crying. I gotta have my wife back.
Self-made millionaire Bruce Koklich is usually in total control, but his beloved wife is missing.
I can't live like that, please.
I loved her so much. We were just the most perfect couple. She's the love of my life. I don't know what I'm going to do if she's gone.
Jenna Koklich is a smart, successful businesswoman, the daughter of a former state senator. Where is she?
It had all the elements of a mystery and a missing woman. It's pretty good stuff.
With its oil-rich hills and waterfront mansions, Long Beach, California is hot property.
It was a place where one could make a lot of money in Southern California in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s.
Ruling the real estate game in this thriving city are Bruce and Jenna Koklich.
Honey, you looking fantastic.
Bruce and Jana were a very successful couple. We would call a power couple.
So are you playing golf?
I sure am.
He wanted to be very successful in business, and he was.
Bruce's beautiful wife comes from good stock.
Please, Elise.
clothes.
Her father was Paul Carpenter. He had served in the California state capitol. He was very, very successful, very, very popular with his constituents.
Oh, dress.
The shy senator's daughter is drawn to this brash go-getter.
Yeah, for Saturday night?
Yeah, sure.
He was smarter than the average bear.
Green's my color.
Honey, every color's your color.
He thought he was smarter than everybody else.
He was very outgoing, opinionated, a very strong personality, overpowering almost.
Okay, let's go.
She loved Bruce. Just no getting around it. She just oozed love for that guy.
Over 20 years of marriage, the Koklich's realty company flourishes. Their specialty? Buying and selling repossessed homes. They make millions from others' misfortune.
If you asked me what Bruce's goals were, I would say to make money and to make more money. He wasn't shy about it. He liked to make money.
Their own home is a luxurious mansion in the exclusive Lakewood Country Club. On Monday, August 20th, 2001, Bruce prepares for a busy day.
I'm off to the office now. I'll see you.
Prior to going to work, he had seen his wife. She was fine. She was in the bed. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. He actually left a little early that day to stop off at a viewing.
Jana says she'll see him at the office at 10 a.m.
He got to the real estate business sometime between 10 and 11 that morning, and she wasn't there. Well, he said he immediately got disturbed because he knew that she should have been there, and he started calling her and got no response from the home. So he said he knew something had to be wrong.
By Monday afternoon, Bruce reports Jana missing to police. Los Angeles County Homicide Detective Ray Peavy is called in to investigate.
Is Jana alive? Has she been kidnapped? Does some person have her at this point and is holding her as a hostage? So we really didn't know what to think.
Also missing, Jana's SUV. The LA County Sheriff turns to the public for help.
Everybody that turned on their television during that week was aware of the fact that this woman was missing. They knew who her father was.
It was the sort of story that always got a lot of time, got a lot of ink.
The mystery of the missing senator's daughter hits a nerve with the nation. But as detectives delve into Jana's life, they begin to wonder, is this real estate queen really as advertised?
She had lost weight. She was looking good. She was out exercising, and she was meeting people.
She was ready to spread her wings. She was ready to move on.
It's entirely possible that she did decide to simply leave all this behind, go off, and create a new life for herself.
A few days later, an SUV matching Jana's is found abandoned in a local garage.
The patrolman found it in the city of Signal Hill, which is in the outskirts of Long Beach, just a couple of miles from where Bruce Koklich lives.
And sure enough, the sheriff's department comes over, they open up the garage, and voila.
Forensic examiners and a blood expert inspect the car.
And they say the back area of the vehicle is soaked in what appears to be blood.
And it turned out that was Jana's blood. And so we could establish at that point that her body undoubtedly was in the back of that car and taken most likely for the disposal.
In the cargo area lies a cryptic clue.
The other thing that was found in there was a feather. And the feather looked like it came from possibly a pillow. There was some type of foul play that she may have been kidnapped, may have been a carjacking.
Come on, keep your mouth shut and do as I say. Oh my God. Go and get out.
Investigators are now hunting a gang of carjackers.
Somebody put this car in this garage. We know it wasn't here before Wednesday because the guy that owns the garage had checked on it. We know that the car was missing since Monday. So from Monday to Wednesday, at least, someone had this car and was driving it around.
She got guards.
No fingerprints are found, so detectives try to lure the suspects out of hiding.
Look on her face.
We're gonna scare the hell out of somebody. We have evidence in the car that's gonna link this car to whoever put it in this garage. Boy, it was like throwing the proverbial bait in the water.
The hulking oil wells of Signal Hill, California, could hold a grisly secret. The blood-soaked car of missing millionairess Jenna Koklich was found nearby. Police fear she's the victim of a botched carjacking, and her body has been dumped.
Where the car is found, there are many oil wells. There are many areas where there's excavation, there's deep holes where bodies can be thrown that would never be uncovered, never be found.
We searched that entire area.
The investigators at the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department's Homicide Bureau are called the Bulldogs. Once they get a case, they don't let go until the killer is caught.
The Bulldogs don't dig up any bones, but they do sniff out a clue. A Signal Hill resident calls with a tip-off about the mystery carjackers.
The mother of this kid contacted detectives and said, look, my son was in that car, but he had nothing, I mean nothing to do with the murder of this woman.
Yes, wallet.
The woman tells cops the SUV was left outside her home the morning Jenna vanished.
7 o'clock in the morning that day, she said, I looked out my window and I saw this car sitting on the street in front of our house. The car was unlocked, the driver's window was down, there was a woman's purse sitting on the passenger seat. She said, I could see a cell phone in there. And she said, you could actually see a gun in there. And she says, this is a setup.
Her teenage son and his pals are not so streetwise.
Cell phone.
They saw the purse there, they saw the cell phone. It was just too tempting to them.
Go on, call, see if someone answers.
Boys will be boys, as they say. The kids get in the car, and the keys are in it. They're driving the car around. There was cash in the purse. They split the money between themselves. They took the cell phone, and they sold it. They found a gun inside the side pocket on the driver's side. They took the gun to a local gang member and sold it to him. The boys drove the car around, and after a few days, decided they better do something with the car, so they ditched it.
Investigators tracked down the purse, the phone, and the gun. The teenager's story checks out, and they are cleared of murder. So who dumped Jenna's car at the rough end of town?
The windows had been rolled down, the key was in the ignition. I've been a journalist for more than 40 years. The only time I've ever seen that is when someone was trying to get someone to steal the vehicle.
Bruce Koklich is adamant that Jana was still tucked in bed at 6 a.m. the day she disappeared. But by 7 a.m., her car is found abandoned in the Badlands, miles from home. Detectives smell a rat.
Keep your mouth shut and do as we say.
For someone to come over, kidnap her, take her somewhere, kill her, leave the car there, all this within an hour's time, it just doesn't make sense that it could happen.
Detectives retraced Jenna's movements that final weekend. On the Friday night, a friend drops her home after an Eric Clapton concert in L.A.
They had a little procedure, the two of them did. She went inside and she turned the house light off, the front porch light off, and then clicked it back on. And that was the sign to Nene that everything was okay inside the house. So Nene drove away believing that Jana was safe.
The next morning, Jana doesn't show up for a workout. It's the first of a string of appointments she misses.
For all of Saturday, all of Sunday, and Monday morning, no one heard from her.
Jana even misses a movie date with her mom.
Janie Carpenter called Jana several times, and at one point in time, she even said, Jana, I'm very worried. We were supposed to get together today. You didn't come. You haven't called. I'm very worried.
She and her father were very close, and her father was dying, lived in Houston at the time, and he called Jana daily, or Jana would call him daily. And if she was going to be in a situation where she was not going to be available, she would let him know.
Jenna's longtime friend, Jan Baird, is worried. This is totally out of character.
She never canceled anything unless she had to. Oh, she always called. She was very good about that. She never stood anyone up, ever. She didn't call her mother. The fact that she didn't call her mother just ate at me.
The only person who sees Jana alive that weekend is her husband, Bruce.
They decided collectively that they would spend some quality time alone during that weekend and that they would disregard these previously made plans so that they could just spend time together. That included, according to Bruce, not answering their telephone, letting their answer machine pick up any messages.
Police talked to Bruce's neighbors.
At around midnight or so, which would have been right after Jana would have gotten home, a couple of neighbors said they heard some noises coming from the home. They said that the noises could have been something being moved around, like furniture being moved. There was some loud noises being made. It didn't sound like an argument, just a lot of noises in the home. And they said that was very unusual because it's typically a very quiet house and a quiet neighborhood.
And when detectives interview Bruce's business partner, alarm bells start to ring. He and Bruce return to the house Monday afternoon to search for Jana.
Bruce had to disarm the burglar alarm. In other words, he had to type in a code so that they were able to enter the home without the burglar alarm going on. The only people, as we were able to determine later, that knew what the code was were Bruce and Jana Koklich.
It didn't add up. Didn't make sense that the alarm would be set. That would indicate that she left. And if it was a robbery, if it was a burglary, who would reset the alarm?
When investigators question the Koklich's housekeeper, she is happy to air their dirty laundry.
She looks at the bed, at their bed, and she says, yeah, there's usually a fitted sheet on the bed, and it's missing. Also missing, she's told us, was a pillowcase and a pillow from the bed.
Those king-size sheets are gone. What is on the bed are full sheets. They don't really fit the bed. She noticed something was wrong. She knew that the Kokliches never changed the sheets on their own, so she knew somebody else had changed them.
Expert testing on the mysterious feather found in Jana's car shows it matches the other pillow in the Koklich bedroom. Bruce says it's proof that Jana was abducted.
Someone had broken into their home and kidnapped Jana after he saw her Monday morning. And he explained that the reason the sheets were missing and the bedding was because that person that made off with her had probably wrapped her up in these sheets and taken her away.
Jana's friends aren't so sure.
Who would kidnap Jana out of her own home and put sheets that didn't fit back on the bed?
Detectives hone in on the marital bedroom. A forensic search finds traces of blood in the carpet.
Just little things started adding up. The noise that the neighbors heard in the house, the fact that she didn't keep any of her appointments.
Was this crime much closer to home than Bruce Koklich claims?
Everything was telling us that what Bruce had told us to this point was probably not true.
Millionaire businessman Bruce Koklich calls a press conference, pleading for information about his missing wife, Jana.
Here's this man who alternates between being very calm and very distraught.
I can't live with that.
And Bruce is prepared to pay for some answers.
I will offer a $100,000 reward for
It's a strangely smooth performance.
To her return.
He was repeating over and over, I'll give $100,000 to whoever can bring my wife home. He was trying to point his finger and drive that idea home, and then all of a sudden the flip would come along, and then he's fighting back tears, talking about how much he loved her.
It was the most artificial, crying, there was no tears in his eyes, and he would never have won an Academy Award for his performance.
And when reporters ask about business,
You're in real estate, is that right?
Bruce slides right into sales mode.
Is one of the era's most successful husband-wife operators.
And he almost instantly turned off the tears and went into like an infomercial about his and his wife's real estate business and about how they were like one of the top husband and wife real estate teams in Southern California. And, you know, if you ever want to do business, give us a call.
Bruce's slick sales pitch doesn't end there.
A female reporter, one of the camera women that was at the scene, she told us that Bruce hit on her. You know, here he is, he's a grieving husband, his wife's disappeared, and he leaves a note on this camera lady's car, "I'd like to meet you later for drinks."
It seems that Bruce's taste for the ladies is just as sharp as his eye for a bargain Long Beach property. He's a serial adulterer. And at one open house, a potential buyer views a little more than he expected.
He was pushing the door and realized that he couldn't get in the door because Bruce was leaning up against the door and he was getting oral sex from one of the local streetwalkers. We talked to another woman who said that he propositioned her and offered to pay her, because she was having some financial problems, offered to pay her to have sex with him.
After Jenna's disappearance, Bruce even targets his teenage niece.
He convinces the family to allow his niece to come down and stay with him. She comes down and stays with him. She's like a Jana look-alike, but a younger version. She's 18 years old.
You're more beautiful than your aunt. Look at you.
She tells her parents that Uncle Bruce hit on her.
We'll have a good time.
The family saw that and was aghast at what was going on. My God, they must have been saying, let's find out what happened to your wife before you start hitting on a niece.
As detectives dig deeper into Bruce's life, they find that the Koklich's 20-year marriage was at a breaking point.
Oh, yeah, I heard that doesn't.
They found out that they couldn't have children. So then she asked him if they could adopt a child. And he strung her along and said, yeah, we'll look into it. And then finally he just said, no, I don't want to adopt a child. I think she got to the point where she was just fed up with this guy.
Jana starts to spend more time going out without Bruce.
I'm going with Nene, Bruce.
Why are you going? Why?
Because I want to go out and have some fun.
What do you mean, have
Bruce realized that she might be planning to divorce him.
How was he going to get rid of Jana without a divorce, which would strip him from really his power being his business and the assets that he had accumulated. So the one way to get rid of her was to kill her.
No, it's over! Hey, no!
Bruce is also banking on a bonus. Jana's $1 million life insurance policy.
I think it came down to greed. Greed, believe me, is a very, very, very common reason for people to kill, especially a husband and wife thing.
5 months after Jana's disappearance, Bruce Koklich is charged with her murder. Police believe the attack begins after midnight Friday night.
When she got home from that concert, that there was some type of an altercation between her and her husband.
Bruce?
And that during that altercation, we believe that he in some way disabled her.
I warned you! I warned you!
He took her body into the garage, put her into the back section of her own vehicle, and that he then took a pillow off the bed with a pillowcase, held that pillow over some portion of her body, and fired that gun through the pillow to muffle the sound. He had all weekend to dispose of the body. He didn't report her until Monday.
Bruce dumps Jana's body, then cleverly ditches her car.
Took the car with Jana's blood in it and left that car parked on the street in a bad area, a high crime area, and left the car unlocked, left the keys in it, left the gun in it.
His master plan? Someone steals the car, then has blood on their hands for Jana's murder.
Bruce did an excellent job, got rid of the body, and it was almost like a perfect murder.
Almost. In February 2003, Bruce Coquelich takes the stand at his own murder trial.
Bruce was a very confident, some people would say a cocky person. He felt that he could control whatever was going on around him.
I believe that Bruce thought he would get away with this.
And he does get away.
It was 7-5 for a conviction, which is a hung jury.
Bruce Coquelich posts the $1 million bail and walks free. 8 months later, the DA's office orders a second trial. They enlist attorney and evidence expert Ron Bowers to connect all the circumstantial facts.
There was no direct evidence, there was no smoking gun, so the jury had to understand what are all these little pieces and how do they connect and what does it mean? What can you infer from it?
This time, the jury buys it.
Within hours of the second trial, the jury came in with a guilty verdict of second-degree murder.
The cocky millionaire is no longer crowing.
He was very shocked, and when they handcuffed him and led him away, he was very surprised. He thought he was going to be walking home free as a result of the trial.
I worked for actually 38.5 years in law enforcement, and there was nothing that even compared to the satisfaction of solving this particular case and convicting the killer.
His sentence, 15 years to life. To this day, Bruce Coquelich has kept his silence.
I knew Jana was gone. I still want to know what happened to her. I wish that we had a body.
I can't imagine anyone letting him out of prison anytime real soon until he does fess up to what he did and where the body is. As arrogant as he is, I don't think he ever will.
These women thought wealth could be their security blanket. It only ended up smothering the flames of love. Fran Hayes' marriage sank in a mire of bitterness and betrayal, while Jana Coquelich was desperate to flee her cheating spouse. The greed of their husbands destroyed them both, and all the riches in the world couldn't pay the price of love. Till next we meet behind mansion walls, I'm Christopher Mason.